Good evening, everyone in the gallery and those joining us online this evening. My name is Councillor Mohammed Semra, Mayor of the City of Maribyrnong, and I welcome you to the March 2026 Council meeting. I declare the meeting opened at 6:29 p.m. Maribyrnong City Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land, the Wurundjeri, Wurrung and Bunurong peoples of the Kulin Nation, and pays its respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I remind everyone to please have their mobile phones on silent. I advise the gallery that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on Council's website. All care is taken to maintain your privacy. However, your presence may be recorded today. In accordance with Council's governance rules, meetings may be photographed, filmed or recorded, may not be photographed, filmed or recorded unless with the consent of the Chief Executive Officer. I advise that there are no apologies tonight. Councillors, are there any leave of absence? No leave of absence requests? Yep, and we understand Councillor Tuara is on his way. 5 minutes. In accordance with the Local Government Act 2020, do any councillors have a conflict of interest in relation to any of the agenda items, officers included? Any councillors?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Could I please advise that I do have a conflict of interest in relation to item 14.1, the confidential employment matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Celia. We now move to public question time. Public question time is managed in accordance with Council's governance rules. Members of the public can submit a maximum of 3 questions prior to the commencement of the meeting. As Chair, I will decide who answers those questions. Public question time is limited to 15 minutes unless an extension is required, and I will ask for Councillors' consent to extend once that time comes. We'll now move to questions. Our first question is from Sally Hawkins. Question 1, the traffic assessment MCG Consult 2022 April 2025 used to inform decision on Austin Street pop-up park assumes no through traffic in affected streets, but residents have observed a marked increase. How will Council monitor and account for through traffic during the trial? Mike, can I get you to answer, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. We'll undertake traffic counts to understand the actual vehicle counts in all the 6 side streets, including North Street, connecting Charles and Austin Streets. The next steps will be determined based on those reported traffic counts.
Thank you, Mike. Question 2 from Sally. Through traffic is already impacting residents beyond vehicle counts. What measures will Council use to assess amenity impacts on affected streets, including speed, unsafe driving, noise, vibration, and loss of informal residential street use, such as children playing?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the Council will also inform us of vehicle speeds and the level of non-compliance in the one-way streets, and we'll assess those impacts, the impacts on the amenity aspects outlined in the question based on the data collected.
Question 3 from Sally. How will residents of streets identified as experiencing increased traffic, example North Street, be formally engaged during the trial? And how will their feedback be weighted when deciding whether the park becomes permanent?
Thank you, Mayor. A community survey will be undertaken later this year, in 2026, and again at the end of the trial period, 2027, to fully understand the community sentiment around the road closure and the use of the pop-up park. This would typically be undertaken through an online survey, and feedback from residents and businesses in the proximity of the park would be segregated from the response provided by the broader community. And the results would be made publicly available in the form of the engagement report shared through the Your City, Your Voice webpage. And the final decision to make the park permanent or not would rest with a report to Council. Yep.
And I'm sure councillors will take into heavy consideration the community consultation that takes place. It's important that a decision making takes the community with us on that journey. We have a question from Paige Turner. With the state government plans to revitalise Tottenham Station, does the council plan on revitalising the shared park and walking path along Cross and Rupert Street? At present, the path has large amounts of rubbish and inadequate lighting to feel safe at night. Can I get Patrick to answer, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So it's my understanding the state government is yet to release detailed plans of this project. When it does, officers will review these plans and provide a response, including opportunities for lighting improvements to the shared user path along Cross Street and Rupert Streets. However, we don't have any current plans to upgrade the lighting along this shared user path.
Yep. Question 2 from Paige. Would the council consider installing cameras along Cross Street, Rupert Street walking paths to improve safety for community members, especially during low light hours? At present, delivery bike rider at high speed down the path and have nearly collided with people. Can I get Director for Infrastructure, please?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. So the installation of cameras and lighting along these types of paths is not common practice. However, we will look into this option. Officers have also been working with Victoria Police on development of an e-bike safety policing strategy, and council officers will raise the Cross and Rupert Streets shared user path as a potential site for this e-bike safety and monitoring.
Thank you, Patrick. A question from Jackie Glover. What measures will council introduce to provide temporary resident parking protections or restrictions on contractor parking so that local residents are not displaced from their own streets during these prolonged projects, especially Indri, Bizana, Alwell, Hex, Guello and Carlisle streets? Patrick?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor, I'm assuming the question is referring to the next DC development, and projects of this scale would ordinarily come with an approved traffic management plan associated with the construction. Officers will investigate what traffic management measures are currently in place and work with the developer to improve parking conditions and support local residents throughout the construction period.
Another question from Madeline Searle. Question 1, flood risk cards are being trialled in Maribyrnong Township following MCRA's leading advocacy. Flood charts show flood heights at residents' home. How many flood cards were prepared for distribution and being delivered to residents to date? Can I get Mike to answer, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for the question, Madeline. A total of 466 property flood risk cards have been produced. And of these, 237 have been distributed through door knocks and community barbecue and pre-arranged collection, and the remaining cards are available for community collection.
Yeah. Question 2 from Madeline. Melbourne Water released climate change flood maps to inform property renovating, etc. for the Maribyrnong River in 2024. How many properties in the city of Maribyrnong are now at major flood risk, and what has council done to advise property owners? Can I get Mike to please answer?
Thank you, Mayor. So the updated flood mapping was a Melbourne Water project which modelled predicted flooding with climate change impacts at 2,100. We understand that Melbourne Water did undertake limited community engagement prior to the data being released, but much more comprehensive community engagement will take place if and when the modelling is incorporated into any future planning scheme via a planning scheme amendment. And as you'd be aware, a request for that planning scheme amendment is currently with the Minister for Planning for consideration. In the meantime, full details of the updated mapping can be found on Melbourne Water's website. And we don't immediately have the figures for the number of properties that are on flood-prone land and or affected. We do have general plans, obviously, but the numbers, we're happy to take that on notice and follow that directly with yourself, Madeline.
Thank you, Mike. Question 3 from Madeline. Council's Neighbourhood Flood Network conducted door knocks on 23rd of February after Vic Emergency's flood watch advice. Is Council aware of the injuries and panic caused by the door knock? And can you disclose Council's policies and training for the network to conduct safe, accurate door knocks?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I am aware that the door knock did cause a concern for a resident. However, I have not heard from this individual to clarify the particulars of that issue. Generally speaking, though, the Community Flood Network has advised that engagement and responses have been generally positive, but we will be attending a debrief at the next network meeting and we'll raise those concerns as part of that discussion.
Thank you. But we have a question from Thomas Foreman. In January 2026, I was tagged on a social media post where Deputy Mayor Councillor Meredith stated that it would cost 30-40 million to redevelop the former Barlow Saigon Market site, 63-67 Nicholson Street in Footscray. When I asked for the source of that figure, I was directed to email the councillor, yet my questions were redirected to customer service, and it has taken over 2 months to confirm that the quoted figure was a personal estimate, not based on analysis by the council. Given council's commitment to ethical leadership and meaningful engagement, why was the claim not clarified at the time? And will council commit to timely, transparent, evidence-based communication with the community on priority issues rather than delayed responses through formal processes? Can I get the Director of Governance, Lucas?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Council's position regarding the former Little Saigon Market site has been communicated to Mr Foreman in writing on more than 5 occasions. In those instances, it was articulated that no detailed analysis of costs had been undertaken on the basis that Council does not consider the site a strategic acquisition, given the significant land holdings that Council already holds in central Footscray. However, initial cost estimates, including the potential upgrade of the space, came in at least $18 million, which was cost prohibitive, and we don't expect that we expect rather that the cost in practice to be much higher. This was communicated to the petitioner at the time and in formal correspondence on June 12, 2025, and in each subsequent communication, including on the 3rd of March this year. The figure mentioned by the Deputy Mayor is simply a ballpark personal estimate and is not material in any way to the decision of Council. The decision not to proceed was formally endorsed by Council as part of the governance report in May 2025. Mr Foreman received comprehensive responses on multiple occasions. Whilst Council is committed to transparent communication, in this instance, Council considers that it has clearly and repeatedly explained our position on this matter.
Thank you, Lucas. Question 2 from Thomas. Council's 2020-2025 open space strategy clearly identifies that Central Footscray lacks both local and neighbourhood level open space assets within safe and easy walking distance of residents, workers and visitors, and the council plan commits to livable neighbourhoods, a place for all and a safe climate and healthy environment. Since April 2025, responses from the council have not outlined when or how this documented shortfall will be addressed. When will council publish a funded, time-bound plan to deliver additional local and neighbourhood level open space in Central Footscray in order to address the forecast population targets consistent with these adopted strategies? Can I get Lucas, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you again. In responses provided in writing to the questioner in both January and March this year, advice was given that Council is seeking for the development of significant open space in Footscray through the development of the RecWest project, which aims to provide more than 2,500 square metres of open space within a very short distance of the former Little Saigon Market site. In addition to the questioner being sent this advice, RecWest is one of Council's major advocacy priorities and has been so for some years. Public promotion of Council's intent to achieve positive creative, lifelong learning and open space outcomes is publicly available on Council's website, its advocacy documents, and through the number of public events held to promote the opportunity as Council seeks funds from other levels of government.
Thank you, Lucas. Question 3 from Thomas. Director of Corporate Services Lucas Gosling stated on 3rd of March 2026 that a grassed open space outcome would not meet community expectations. However, Council's own 2020-2025 open space strategy found that Footscray residents prioritise informal passive green space for relaxation over structured uses, and Council has not pursued lower cost or temporary activation options such as leasing with the landowner who has listed the site for sale since April 2025. What specific evidence is Council relying on to contradict its own documented community consultation? And if none exists, will Council commit to formally assessing and publicly costing temporary activation options, including leasing arrangements, before ruling them out? Lucas?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So I certainly note the questions regarding interim activation, community expectations and alternative options. And these been addressed in multiple written responses, most recently on the 3rd of March 2026. In those responses, I advise Mr Thomas that council officers have discussed the possibility of short-term activation with the site landowner. The landowner did not express interest in short-term activation, and as a result, council has not progressed costings or temporary arrangements. Council considers that acquisition for land and open space would be expected by the community to deliver a high quality and enduring public realm outcome rather than just a temporary or minimal passive grassed intervention. I advise that whilst additional passive open space is acknowledged as needed in Footscray, council is again seeking to deliver significant open space outcomes through endorsed strategic projects including Creative West, which represents substantial long-term investment in Footscray CBD. I once again reiterate that council's position is clear and we will not be pursuing this site.
Thank you, Lucas. And council will continue to work with landowners to promote short-term activation. With that being said, councillors, we've reached 15 minutes. So if you are all okay, I will like to extend the question time for additional 15 minutes. Can I get a show of hands? Yep, we'll extend for another 15 minutes. Okay, we'll go on to a question from Minna Wing. Question 1. Does council operate as a secular organisation per the good governance principles of separation of church and state? Can I get the CEO to answer, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Yes, council certainly is a secular organisation, and like all local governments, we also acknowledge and celebrate a variety of important days of significance from many parts of our community, and we are a very diverse community. This includes Ramadan, but also acknowledges Lent, Easter, Christmas, Tet Festival, the Lunar New Year, and more than 60 other days of significance throughout the year. These days reflect the vibrancy and diversity of our community, and certainly our community expects us to do that.
Thank you, Celia. I will now ask you to read out the next 2 questions, as I'd like to respond myself.
Thank you, Mayor. So the second question is, in the last month's council meeting, the Mayor suspended the meeting to acknowledge the start of Ramadan, celebrated by 3.95% of the population of Maribyrnong. Why did the Mayor see it necessary to suspend the meeting to acknowledge a religious event?
Thank you, Celia. I chose to pause the meeting to acknowledge the start of Ramadan because of the broader context we are seeing both nationally and locally around social cohesion. Research from the Scanlon Foundation shows that around 1 in 3 Muslim Australians do not feel a sense of belonging. And we also know that Islamophobia is on the rise. In that context, a brief acknowledgement was a simple but meaningful way to demonstrate respect, inclusion, and belonging for members of our community who too often feel marginalized. This was not about elevating one faith over another. As a council and as a city, we recognize and respect many religions and cultural observances. On 18th of February, council also shared a social media post acknowledging both the start of Lent and Ramadan, reflecting that broader commitment. My role as mayor is to foster social cohesion, and it is important now more than ever before, and to ensure our community is one where people of all faiths and backgrounds feel seen, respected, and know that they belong. That principle guides these acknowledgements and my engagement with the community more broadly.
Thank you, Mayor. And there's a further question, and some of this you have picked up already. And I would like to point out that the statistics in these questions have come from the questioner. They haven't come from the council. So why did the Mayor also not acknowledge the start of Lent, celebrated by 19% of the population as Catholics, and Lunar New Year, celebrated by 8% who are Buddhists, which occurred within 2 days of Ramadan and which are jointly celebrated by many more residents of Maribyrnong?
As Mayor, I recognise and respect the many faiths and cultures that make up our community. Around this time of year, I have attended and supported a number of Lunar New Year events and maintain a strong relationship with our Vietnamese community, regularly engaging with community leaders. I also continue to support and attend the Friday Food Relief Program at St. John's Church in Paisley, working closely with the church, who do, might I say, amazing work, and its pastor to support residents in need. Ramadan, Lent, and New Year all occurred within a very short period of time. And while it is not always possible to formally acknowledge every significant observance in the same forum, this is never a reflection of priority. My responsibility as Mayor is to represent the whole community and to ensure our city remains inclusive, respectful, and welcoming for everyone.
Thank you, Mayor, and back to you for the final questions.
We have a question from Edward Merrifield. I'm a regular visitor of Footscray Mall and have noticed that conditions appeared to improve last year. However, in recent months, there has been a noticeable decline. There are now a significant number of rough sleepers occupying the mall throughout the day, with bedding and personal belongings set up along the shopping strip. This is impacting local businesses, pedestrian access, and the overall sense of safety and amenity in the area. Can Council please outline what actions are currently being taken to address this situation and what immediate and longer-term measures are planned to improve conditions in Footscray Mall for residents, traders, and visitors? Can I get Mike to please answer?
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like we've answered this question a fair few times in different council meetings. But it's not easy, and we're endeavouring to manage these conditions in a coordinated way, focusing on safety, public access, and general amenity. This includes having a visible presence in the mall, building relationships with those sleeping rough, and endeavouring to put them in touch with relevant service providers. We're also targeting just general cleaning and amenity and monitoring conditions, and we're working closely with Victoria Police and other community service providers throughout the area.
And we expect the Salvo's Community Cafe to open soon, and the community will be made aware when that does occur. Question 2 from Edward. There has been ongoing discussion about the introduction of Salvation Army services in Footscray to support vulnerable members of the community. However, aside from recent public commentary, the local member for Footscray Cater Hall, there appears to be limited clarity around timelines or delivery. Can Council provide an update on the status of this initiative, including any confirmed timelines, what services will be delivered, and how Council is working with relevant agencies to ensure these supports are implemented as soon as possible? Mike, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I feel like you've kind of just answered this question, but the timing, the scope and the implementation of any of these services are being led by the Salvation Army in partnership with the state government. And like yourself, Mr Merrifield, we're very hopeful the service will be up and running by the end of the month. However, confirmed timelines and service details are ultimately subject to the Salvation Army's readiness.
All right, thank you, Mike. That concludes public question time. I will declare public question time closed at 6:52. Councillors, we'll now move to agenda item 6.1, confirmation of minutes, 17th of February. I'll call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lam.
Office recommendation that the council confirm the minute of the council meeting held on the 17th of February 2026.
I'll call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. I will now put the motion to a vote. Councillors, please cast your vote. I declare the motion carried. Councillors, there are no reports from committees to be tabled at this meeting, and there are no petitions to be tabled at this meeting. We'll now move to agenda item 9.1, decision on VCAT matter reference 3840 Moreland Street, Footscray. Can I ask the CEO to address the committee in relation to this item? Has any been received?
one request has been received.
Can you?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor. Yes, one request has been received from Andrew Gray on behalf of the applicant. Would you like to invite
Yep, I invite Andrew
to
Gray to come up.
address the council?
Thank you, Mayor, councillors, officers. My name is Andrew Graham, Town Planning Consultant. I'm acting for the applicant in this matter. This is obviously a large site, 1,244 square metres in the activity centre. It fronts both Moreland Street and Ewers Street and sits within an area that's undergoing significant transition. Obviously, the RICO site, which adjoins my client's site, is currently being developed for accommodation of up to 8 storeys, and this will reshape the immediate Moreland Street interface and contribute to the evolving built form character of the activity centre, and we feel our development will sit comfortably within that context. This is an application that has been through a lot of work between ourselves and council officers, and the proposal before you now is a scaled back development down to 7 storeys with 41 apartments and a commercial tenancy at ground floor level plus 2 basement level car parking areas. One of the benefits of this proposal, if councillors know the site, is at the moment it's an inactive frontage. It's got a large vehicle crossover. What we are proposing to do to Moreland Street is to provide for an active frontage, new nature strips, street trees and car parking. And in the agenda, you'll note the comparison plans between the refused plans and the plans that we've been negotiating through VCAT, and you'll see that there has been significant changes. The development has been reduced by 1 level, plus has been some roof decks and other things have been removed to reduce the height down from 28.79 metres to 24.4 metres. There's been greater setbacks above the podium, both to Moreland Street, Ewers Street and to the south. We say it's a really high quality architectural design. As I noted before, it's 41 dwellings down from 45. The proposal provides high level compliance with clause 58 and provides for a high quality internal, external amenity. The proposal in terms of sustainability provides for a range of ESD and water sensitive design measures, rooftop solar generation, rainwater reuse, electric vehicle readiness. And one of the key aspects of this proposal which has been negotiated is the upgrade to Ewers Street, which the applicant is proposing to fund. And what that involves is a Public Works Plan Section 173 agreement, which provide for upgrades to the road pavement, pedestrian safety and hard landscaping. We say that this application has been refined through a negotiation with officers through the VCAT process. We have taken consideration of matters that the officers have raised in terms of the concerns. Also, those were concerns that were raised in objections as well. We think where we have got to is a good compromise with the proposal meeting the planning scheme requirements, and we are happy with the conditions that have been recommended in the attachment. So we would seek council support for an application to be reached to reach a consent order through the VCAT process. Thank you, councillors. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yep, you can just turn off the mic. Perfect. I now call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council agree to consent to the issuing of a planning permit for buildings and works and a reduction in the minimum requirements of the parking overlay at 38 to 40 Moreland Street, Footscray, subject to the conditions contained in attachment 1.
I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
I might just say a couple of things, which is that firstly to thank the applicant for positively responding to council's conditions following their VCAT meeting in January, noting that council originally rejected this application in August last year, and the officers have revised their recommendations following their in-principle agreement to amend the planned proposal and factor in the considerations. Also, just to thank the community members who have provided input in relation to this application, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Yengi. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just briefly adding on with Councillor Yengi. Yeah, really appreciate the the adjustments to the application as well. Like, that's really good. What I really was impressed with the changes was Ewers Street and the landscaping and the safety there, because I know that that was like a really big thing that came up with quite a few people. So, and the height as well. So reducing that, and yeah, and again, like, really appreciate the community taking part in this as well, and appreciate the changes there. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Okay, I will now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. We'll now be moving to agenda item 10.1, awarding of contract 1332-26, RecWest and Shorten Reserve Stage 2. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Tuari.
That Council 1 award contract number 1332-26 RecWest and Shorten Reserve Stage 2 to Ireland Brown Constructions Pty Ltd for the total contract sum of $32,390,450 excluding GST, and 2 notes the forward funding commitment as part of the 2026-27 and 2027-28 Capital Works Program. 3, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to execute contract number 1332-26 RecWest and Shorten Reserve Stage 2 to Ireland Brown Constructions Pty Ltd for the total contract sum of $32,390,450 excluding GST, and 4, authorise the Chief Executive Officer to approve variations to this contract.
Thank you, Councillor Tuari. I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Lam. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Well, just briefly, just letting community know, those that are following it, this is now stage 2 of the RecWest and Shorten Reserve program. It's progressing nicely. We did have some initial truck delays and a few other issues. They've all been sorted out now. There is a question or a clarification, if I can ask that now, and that's basically, I had a few members of the community reach out to me asking about the updates and notifications on stage 2 works, because stage 1, the trucks movement was increased by about 2 months. They've just asked if they could be notified, whether by email, letters or whatever, whoever is impacted around the area, if they could be updated with timelines or any impacts, updates on stage 2 as well. Is that possible? Can we do that?
Yes, if I could, through the Mayor, if I could answer that. Once, if this report is resolved on tonight in the affirmative, then we will certainly put in place our communications plan. So we haven't actually talked about that yet. It is all in the tender document in terms of the schedule of works and when that will be. It's not starting tomorrow, so we do have time to get that out and make sure people are clear. Can I also just answer the second part around the lost time over January and February? That time has actually now been made up, and we are back on track and on time with those overworks. So we're all good to go with both stage 1 on track and stage 2 starting shortly.
Thank you.
So it's good to know we're on track. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Just great to hear that CEO, and can't wait to see that second stage is happening again. Thanks.
Would any other councillors like to speak to the motion? Yep. We'll now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Okay, councillors, we'll now move to agenda item 10.2, Council submission to Amendment GC 276, Inner West Employment Zoning. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Tuari.
That Council endorse the draft submission to the State Government consultation on Amendment GC 276, shown as Attachment 1, which contains the following recommendations. A, review alternative zones and boundaries for the state significant industrial precincts to encourage land use change towards smaller format service industries that are less reliant on heavy vehicles. This includes tailoring zoning to specific sub-precincts. B, considering the introduction of a design and development overlay to improve amenity within the state significant industrial precincts. C, consider suggested changes to planning scheme amendment documentation attached. D, undertake further strategic work such as background economic analysis to understand impact on local jobs and how this will transition over time. E, undertake a business attraction strategy to attract new businesses and improve economic activity in the industrial precincts. F, understand the needs of existing business and identify initiatives support that could assist heavier industrial uses moving further west. G, invest in enhancing Stony Creek to improve water quality, access to open space, and natural character and the values of the creek. H, undertake a review of the data centre designs and implement regulations on water and energy efficiencies. I, implement low emission zone trial within the City of Maribyrnong to improve air quality in the Inner West. J, undertake a range of improvements including intersection, street and landscape upgrades to improve the amenity of the precinct as set out in Meads and framework plans. K, continue to work with the Council to implement air quality improvements. And 2, authorise the Manager City Development to provide a copy of Council's submission to the Department of Transport and Planning and liaise with Department of Transport officers to advocate for Council's position in the submission. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Tuari. I'll call for Councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith, are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
No, formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yep, just briefly, thank you. Yeah, I like the industrial one, like the change in the zoning. I also like in the councillor, like in the report here as well, the submission, like it's also got information on the impact of data centres. So, so making sure that, so just being aware that water and energy efficiency and Stony Creek. So I really like that this report has referenced all of that information. I like it that it's also referenced the air quality plan. And if you think about how much energy the data centres do use, they do use like 100 generators, and a hospital only has about 2. So they use an awful amount, so we don't want that area to become a really heavy sort of, space of data centres, and without consideration of the water and energy efficiency. And happy with the change and the air quality, no big trucks.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Pereira?
I beat you. Yeah, I just want to note that the engagement by the VPA still has been extended to the 22nd of March. So if you're yet to lodge a submission, there's still time to do so. And thank you to the staff for the comprehensive submission. Community might wish to review some of the items raised in here in responding themselves. Firstly, I guess that Council lacks confidence in the proposed planning scheme amendment and that it won't necessarily have meaningful impact in its goal of removing trucks off local roads and improving amenity and air quality. We've obviously requested through this for a much longer process to develop policy to ensure that this isn't just a tick box exercise, and that we're requesting a range of other actions be implemented, including creating a low emissions zone, and this could also include diverting trucks off local roads and residential areas by connecting truck routes through an existing public land acquisition parcel connecting Paramount to Olympia Street, developing complementary policy frameworks to inform development priorities through the design and development overlays, progress on the Stony Creek Future Directions Plan with clear timelines, and construction of the state government strategic cycling corridors through these areas, as well as bus services. And I would add that, building on our previous MAV motions, this precinct warrants the development of a circular economy strategy, given the presence of the data centres in the area and our collective obligation to ensure resource efficiency and circularity, as well as exploring civic amenity gaps in sports and recreation infrastructure that could be located adjacent to residential areas and also act as a buffer to the industrial zone beyond. And I also encourage the exploration of an active transport link down the freight line from Sunshine to Newport and Spotswood, which would connect existing communities as well as new residential areas at Bradmill and Precinct 15. This planning scheme amendment is a gesture in the right direction, but ineffective unless we take quite a few more steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you. I just want to maybe pick up where Councillor Pereira left off and saying that this is a step in the right direction, but obviously what the government hasn't done is think about the outcome they want in a holistic way. And what the council officers have done is look at what the outcome is, but looked at all of the kind of inputs to achieve that kind of outcome, and that's crossing environment, air quality, the urban form, jobs and business and other things, not just kind of a purely planning, like strict planning, what you might not consider a strict planning issues, but our officers have kind of done the work, I think, that maybe the state government should have done already. So thank you to them for picking this up. This is a really comprehensive submission. It links in with a whole range of council-approved plans and strategic directions and policy directions. So I think that's a good thing because, again, it brings a holistic overview of what's needed to achieve that outcome. And we certainly support less trucks on our streets. Our community supports less trucks on our streets. They've repeatedly over many years advocated for that and advocated to council to continue to advocate for that. So I think what our council officers have prepared is a very comprehensive submission to this consultation, and as Councillor Pereira said, if anybody does want to put their own in, this is a very, very excellent starting point for people to make their own submission. Thanks.
Okay, one more point.
One more.
One more.
Yeah, go on.
Thank you. Yep, I would like to say thank you to the officers for their submission as well. I think I forgot to put that in, but it's a really good submission and it really fills a lot of those gaps that we're missing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Meredith. Was there any other councillors like to speak to this motion? Then with that being said, I will reiterate some of the comments from councillors. I'd like to thank the officers for an excellent submission. I feel like, we're following through on our desire to reduce heavy vehicles off local roads. The report, it does note that we do have some important long-standing industrial tenants in these areas, and we are not planning to drive them away from Malbonong. We acknowledge the likes of Wattle Australia, the paint giant, which has its national headquarters in Malbonong, and Goodman Fielder, owner of the large Uncle Toby's manufacturing facility. We'll have a long-term productive future in our municipality. However, under these proposed changes, we are unlikely to see any new heavy manufacturing facilities constructed in the affected areas covered in this submission, with the proposed transition from Industrial 1 zone to Industrial 3 zone. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. We'll now move to agenda item 10.3, draft community engagement policy. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Lamb.
That council number 1 endorse a draft community engagement policy shown at attachment 2 for the purpose of the community engagement. And number 2, note that following the community engagement process, a final report will be presented to council in June 2026 to consider adoption of the community engagement policy.
Can I get a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Yangi. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Oh, yes, that's briefly. Firstly, I would like to thank you, the Director, Luca Gosling, Director of Customer and Corporate Services, and the Manager, Rebecca Solomon, Manager of Customer Engagement, working with the community, and thank you to all the residents and community have some input and provide some feedback into our council. Customer service is very priority important to the council. We would like to provide the best service to the community, and your involvement and provide input and feedback. This is great for us to listen, to implement. So we were here. You can ask us any one other meeting or provide some other feedback to other channel. And thank you very much, everyone, for the input.
Thank you, Councillor Lamb. Would the second like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I would like to thank the officers for putting together this report. I would also like to thank the community members who have already taken the time to provide feedback on this draft policy. Echoing some of what Councillor Lam has already said, I would like to emphasise that strong community engagement sits at the heart of transparent, accountable and responsive local government. During my 2024 election campaign, one of the most consistent messages I heard from residents was the importance of genuine and meaningful engagement with council. And it's important that our community feels informed, heard and involved in the decisions that we make which shape our neighbourhoods. This policy that we're putting forward represents an important step towards strengthening how we engage with our community and ensures that we do so in ways that work best for our residents. We also recognise that engagement doesn't happen equally across the municipality, so it's really important that we continue to improve the ways in which we reach people, particularly those whose voices may not always be heard and or who may face barriers to participating in traditional engagement processes. And finally, I just want to state that this policy will only be as strong as the input we receive from our community. So I encourage residents to take the opportunity to provide feedback, to be open and honest about their experiences, and to tell us what they would like to see improved and how.
Thank you, Councillor Yangi. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Then I will now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Councillors will now be moving to agenda item 10.4, Live Music Action Plan Advisory Panel, Terms of Reference. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council 1 endorse the Maribyrnong Live Music Advisory Panel Terms of Reference shown at Attachment 1 and the initiation of an expression of interest process to fill the positions on the Maribyrnong Live Music Advisory Panel in accordance with the Terms of Reference, and 2, note that a future report will be presented to Council following the expression of interest process for endorsement of the recommended appointees to the Maribyrnong Live Music Advisory Panel.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Can I get a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Yangi. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Just to say that this is another opportunity for people interested in live music and with the relevant experience or skills that are outlined in the terms of reference to get involved in some of this, to influence decisions that council will make and to provide their experience into that decision-making process, sort of off the back of what Councillor Yengi said about the community engagement. It's only as good as, people getting involved really makes things more meaningful, and it really assists council to make better decisions, I think, when we have people involved in these kinds of panels. So I hope we get flooded with expressions of interest for this, because I know we've got, a creative and experienced community who will be able to give us some really great advice in this area.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. The second, I'd like to speak to the motion.
I'll just say a couple of words, which is really just to implore our community to look at this opportunity and hopefully apply. Like Councillor Thomas noted, we would love to be flooded with lots of expressions of interest, but it's really important that we do get, we do have a robust panel made up of diverse voices, because that will ensure that we have, positive outcomes for our community. So just, really wanting to encourage people to please apply. Even if you don't feel 100% confident, just put your hands up, and we'd love to have you all on board. As many as we're allowed to have on board.
Yep. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Perfect. I'll now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Now be moving to agenda item 10.5, response to notice of motion 2026 03, Footscray Park Management, Maintenance and Community Use. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Thomas.
That Council 1 note the response to notice of motion 2026/03, Footscray Park Management, Maintenance and Community Use. 2, consider the notice of motion 2026/03 completed.
Can I get councillor to second the motion? Councillor Pereira. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally seconded.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Then I might say a few words. I appreciate that I gave the officers a very tight time frame in responding to this motion, which passed at February's council meeting, and I am delighted with the response. It provides a comprehensive summary of what has happened and when at various council and advisory committee meetings in recent years. Also happy that the report outlines a concrete time frame for the upcoming tender process for the water gardens, and something council will back up with the appropriate funding, plus a time frame for when the Footscray Park Master Plan will come to council for adoption in the middle of the year. As I mentioned in February, our community has been waiting for this for some time, and there is a history behind this, but it's exciting that it's progressing, and I know there's going to be many families and many young people that are going to utilize this space. I'll now put the motion to a vote. Okay, I declare the motion carried. We'll now move to agenda item 10.6, Municipal Association of Victoria, May 2026 State Council. I call for a councillor to move a motion. Councillor Yengi.
That council approved the motions for submission to the May 2026 State Council of the Municipal Association of Victoria as shown in Table 1 of this report, and to authorise the Chief Executive Officer to make minor amendments to the motions if requested by the Municipal Association of Victoria.
Thank you. Can I get a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Lamb. Are there any questions or points of clarification? Yes, Councillor Thomas.
I think on page 363 in motion 8, the third point, I think it's worded incorrectly. It says ensuring that suppliers identified in the above UN database as being involved in illegal settlement activities are included on the MAV preferred supply list. I think, should that read are not included? Yeah, I think we're missing a word in there.
I would.
Yeah, that's right. Good.
Councillor.
I didn't think I was reading it wrong. Thank you.
So
That's a good pickup.
Thank you. We will amend that.
Okay, so I understand officers will make that change. That's fine. Okay. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
That was me. Look, just a couple of words, which is really just to thank the officers and Elena, Mav, and maybe Rep over here, for putting in quite a lot of effort to pull this together. So just, yeah, thank you.
Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
I just say again, thank you very much for everyone's involved. It's a lot of comprehensive when to put it at MAV. Thanks.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Meredith?
Just briefly, thank you to Councillor Pereira for all the work, and officers as well for all of the work. And there's 14 fantastic motions in here. So if you are sitting at home or in the audience here, have a read at the motions because they are fantastic. Like there's some here which is ethical procurement, nearly got that word, support to councils, improving bus services across Victoria. There's one on land banking, circular procurement reform. So there's some fantastic motions in here. So I do encourage everybody to get online and have a read of those. And thank you to everybody for the work that's gone into it.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Thomas?
I just want to ditto thank you for all the work that officers and other councillors have done on bringing these motions to us. I did just want to highlight the two around that are focused on the Best Start, Best Life reforms, because councillors often have questions from parents and families about these reforms because they've been a little challenging, I think, to implement and for families to perhaps adjust to. So I just wanted to highlight those because council, these two motions are really calling on government to increase the investment to councils in those programs, in the infrastructure and the programs, which we absolutely know in our community that we have, we don't have enough early childhood centres, and it's always a challenge for our families with young children to be able to access quality, childcare in their suburb or even in the municipality sometimes. So I think these two are particularly important for a lot of families in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And if there's no... Councillor Barrow?
I'll just quickly add around some of the other ones, just following on from the early childhood ones. We also have one for programs targeting kids aged 8 to 12, especially around mental health and cyber safety and leadership opportunities. I just think it's important that we have funding and programs for that age group because we know that if there isn't funding done at that stage, then an early intervention, then we know that challenges can just escalate down the line. And a lot of the other ones, they're things that we know we've heard from our community are really important, but also that these are issues across the whole state. So it's have a look through and encourage other people in other municipalities to contact their councils and support these and look at the ones that other councils are also putting up, because this is our council voice to the state government, and then the Municipal Association of Victoria advocates on our behalf collectively so that we can get better outcomes at our level, because we know that we're in a tight rate capped environment and there is a lot of pressure on us, and rightly so, to develop and deliver high quality amenity and services. And this is just a great opportunity for us to work really collaboratively with other levels of government so that we're all delivering for our communities on the ground.
Thank you, Councillor Pereira. I'd like to also thank the officers for putting together these comprehensive 14 motions for the MAV State Council meeting, where we'll be represented by our delegate, Councillor Elena Pereira. There are a lot of good motions here, and not just the usual request for money from the state government. I particularly like motion 12, which calls for local government to have a formal role in the Homes Victoria strategic planning for the rollout and management of affordable and public housing. Motion 1, calling for a transparent assessment of what is meant to be a 50-50 funding of a council's wonderful maternal and child health services. And motion 6, looking at active transport, infrastructure delivery and performance. And in terms of future years, I think the need is great now. In terms of future years, I think it might be worth scaling back the breadth of our advocacy. I want to thank Lucas Gosling and Phil at the officer level for steering this through and all the work that has gone around this.
Just briefly, like the officers wrote them, and so did Elena Pereira.
Yep. Amazing work, Councillor Pereira. Okay, I'll now put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. We'll now go to agenda item 10.7. We're almost at the finish line. Can I call for a councillor to move a motion? Councillor Yengi?
That council note the February 2026 governance report.
Can I get a councillor to second the motion? Councillor Meredith? Are there any questions or points of clarification? Would the mover like to speak to the motion? Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Formally moved.
Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Then in that case, I will give a few words. I think councils are very transparent, and I do like the way in which our council goes above and beyond what is required in this monthly governance report, with things like status reports and our response to community petitions and officer responses to councillor motions, which have been passed at previous meetings. And if you read the report this month, you'll see that we've been working hard. We had 2 full-day strategic planning sessions on February 16th and February 28th, with the full councillor group and senior management team covering a range of important issues. And I'm looking forward to some of them coming to light in the upcoming 2026-2027 council budget. I'll put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. Councillors, there's no notices of motions to be tabled at tonight's meeting. We'll now move to councillor question time. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Meredith?
It's working. Thank you. I do have a public question there as well, and it's to Celia. Are you able to provide us with an update on the Ewell Street traffic lights?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And through the Mayor, yes, I am able to tell you what's happening there. The traffic lights at the intersection of Ewell Street and Whitehall Street that people will know were put in temporarily. They were installed on that temporary basis as part of the Westgate Tunnel project. And we were told all the way along that they would be removed once the project was completed. They were installed to support construction vehicles entering and exiting the project compound. However, it has been pretty clear how useful those lights are, not just to construction vehicles, but to the community. So council officers have since met with the Department of Transport and Planning to advocate for the lights to be retained on a permanent basis. However, at this stage, we have been advised by the Department of Transport and Planning that our request has been declined, Councillor Meredith, and that DTP intends to proceed with their removal.
Just a follow-up question, if I may, sorry. In light of that, considering that it's been declined, subject to councillor support, would we be able to write to the Minister to reaffirm Council's position to keep the traffic lights, that they remain permanently? Is that
Thank you.
something we can do?
I think, yes, if I could just respond, if councillors are supportive, and the Mayor could let me know, or you could look at that tonight, Council can certainly write to the Minister to reaffirm our position. I believe the Minister is the Honourable Melissa Horn.
If councillors are okay with that, we can send through a letter. Yep. It's all good. Okay. Councillors, are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Amazing. Councillor question time is now closed. Councillors, are there any items of urgent business? Okay, no matters of urgent business. I call on the councillor to move a motion to close the meeting to members of the public in accordance with Section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020. Councillor Thomas.
Apologies, I couldn't just find it. That Council resolved to close the meeting to the public pursuant to Section 66 of the Local Government Act 2020 to discuss confidential agenda item 14.1, confidential Chief Executive Officer employment matter.
I call for a councillor to second the motion. Councillor Meredith, put the motion to a vote. I declare the motion carried. I say the meeting is closed to the public at 7:35 and ask the public to leave the chamber. As well as off. I advise that in accordance with the confidential resolution, no part of the report or the resolutions are to be released to the public. I declare the meeting closed at 7:47 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.